Chronolife, the ultimate virtual reality game. The hottest new continent is now open. When you connect to another world, the first thing that awaits you is 100 million new users, meeting wonderful companions and conquering dungeons and bosses with them. At least that's what the developers of this game claimed. System alert, a new character has been created. Welcome, King Jiseok player. After hearing the greeting from the system, the protagonist stood still for a few more seconds and stared off into the distance. Undoubtedly, the vistas of the new continent are breathtakingly beautiful. However, something is not right here. Why the hell isn't anyone here? Where did all those promised 100 million new users go? And what's that thing he's holding? A shovel? Not understanding what the developers wanted him to do with this item, King Jiseok stabbed the shovel into the ground. In that same second, the dirt beneath his feet glowed with a bright blue light. Suddenly, a huge block of earth flew into the air. Such a performance made the guy literally petrified. The block fell with a clatter next to his feet, and Jiseok, still standing in shock for a moment, looked at the thing perplexed. What the hell is this? Did I get into the wrong game? He thought, not knowing what else to expect from this crazy piece of dirt. The guy decided to poke the block lightly with a shovel, and then there was a small explosion. The piece of dirt disappeared before Jiseok's eyes, appearing in his inventory at the same time. It looked like the authors of Chronolife simply nicked the basic mechanics from the most popular game of mankind. Wanting to see if a similar thing would work with something else, Jiseok ran to the nearest tree, and just as he hit the trunk with the shovel, a piece broke off from the tree and fell into his inventory. Immediately afterward, the system notified the player that a new crafting item was available. In the window that appeared in front of him, the user was asked to make a chair out of a single piece of wood. But is it really going to be that easy? There's no way a chair can be created with just one click. After thinking about it, Jiseok confirmed the craft. At the same moment, a wooden chair began to materialize right in front of him. Eventually, the chair was created, and the block of wood disappeared from the player's inventory. Settling back in his chair, Jiseok laughed merrily and remarked that this mechanic was rather unusual. But his mirth did not last long, for very soon he realized that he was alone. Where did he really go? Is this really Chronolife? Wasn't this game supposed to be an RPG where you kill monsters and level up? System alert. The crafting skill level has increased. More items for crafting are available to the Jiseok player. Sitting back in his chair in despair, Jiseok opened the craft menu. A few more things appeared among the items he could create. This means that this game still has some semblance of skill and level. Now, a guy can make a wooden club, a sword, and even a goddamn siege catapult. What? And that wasn't all. In the list of all those items, Jiseok noticed something he wanted to do first. After cutting more trees and gathering other materials, he chose the right blueprint and began to put blocks in the places indicated by the game. Finishing the job, the guy exhaled with relief. Now his house is finished. Incidentally, the gameplay turned out to be not as dull as he originally envisioned it to be. Sure, the interior of his new home left a lot to be desired, but after all, it was his first job. Satisfied with himself, King Jiseok lay down on the bed he had recently made. This world wasn't so bad, and the beds here are quite comfortable. It's much cozier here than King Jiseok's real home. Well, that's to be expected. The guy himself lives in a small apartment in South Korea. Miracles happen to those who try. Your efforts will never betray you. Conquer yesterday's self. All these motivational phrases kept Jiseok working day in and day out, and eventually turned his life into a gray, dull routine. But today, going into Chronolife, the guy felt as if all the worries of work days left him very quickly. Looking at the shovel in his hand, Jiseok thought about the possibilities in this world for him. The house is 100 meters, or maybe a two-story house with a courtyard. He can build whatever he wants and live however he wants. That's when he realized that this world is truly beautiful. Jiseok thought so until a beastly roar came from behind the front door. Turning his head, he saw an extremely ferocious lion bear with a danger level A standing on the doorstep. This was the first time the guy had seen monsters like this. While he was wondering what he should do next, the beast roared and pounced on him. By some miracle, Jiseok had already managed to jump aside and avoid being hit by the monster's claws. But unfortunately, it was not without losses. His favorite soft bed had been blown to splinters. He wasn't going to let that bastard get away with such insolence. "You're a dead man," Jiseok fiercely said, pointing the shovel at the enemy. "For this homunculus bear destroying someone else's property, he will pay with his life." And by his life, I meant specifically Jiseok's life. Kids, don't play with predatory animals in your home. Otherwise, you will fly into the stratosphere, just like this fool who decided to bash a bear with a shovel. Obviously, Jiseok has stepped back out of range as he lands a nice leg kick. After losing a few experience points, he was immediately revived to safety. That's when it finally dawned on him that he was too damn weak. Looking around, the boy tried to find his home. To his dismay, only ruins remained of his little cottage. Both bed and chair died a brave death in unequal combat with the monster. In tears, hugging what was left of his wooden chair, Jiseok fell to his knees and screamed that just killing him would be enough. Why the hell did that bloody bear have to destroy the house he'd worked so hard to build? While the bastard's going to be back here sooner or later, Jiseok doesn't know how yet, but he will definitely get revenge on that soulless bear. It's been hours. Walking through his domain, the lion bear once again saw a small cottage standing in the middle of a field. With a satisfied roar, the monster burst into the hut through the wall at full speed. Once inside, however, the bear froze with hopelessness. "Welcome to the club, buddy," Jiseok whispered ominously, pointing the siege machine's guns at the intruder. The next second, he yanked the lever. Dozens of sharp spears pierced the monster's thick skin, but it wasn't enough to kill the enemy. Being pinned with spears as if he were a dartboard target, the lion bear rushed towards the protagonist. And it was for just such an occasion that Jiseok recently created a catapult. This little bear has a lot of persistence, but he won't be able to take such a blow. The projectile flew at great speed into the monster's face, knocking out all its teeth. As expected, the enemy did not survive the encounter between his skull and the enormous rock. Bringing the shovel to the breathless body of the beast, Jiseok decided to first make sure that it would not come back to life. As soon as the tip of the shovel touched the bear's fur, a bright blue light formed again. The reward for defeating a danger level A monster was 1 piece of meat, 2 lion bear skins, and 5 bones. And that's not all. In the crafting menu, the maximum brutal helmet and lion bear armor became available to the player. Now, Jiseok is quite lucrative, and so he decides to go hunting. However, he had no idea that he would become not the hunter, but the prey. No sooner had he closed the craft menu than someone's shadow fell on him. Turning around behind him, the guy saw hordes of giant creatures. Their meeting ended as quickly as it had begun. The monsters burned down his house and sent the guy flying again. On his 118th death, he finally began to doubt. He understands why these creatures are trying to kill him, but why would they destroy perfectly good cabins time after time? Jiseok has to rebuild his huts from scratch after each death. It all makes him think these guys are deliberately trying to piss him off. Since that's the case, they didn't get what they wanted at all. Did they really think they'd get Jiseok out of the game that way? They've pissed him off enough that there's no way he's leaving here. Time after time, he'll be reborn, but he'll still kill all those freaks sooner or later. And so the time of the 1000th rebirth came. Hoping to tear apart the pitiful player's small hut once again, the monsters came across a structure of monstrous proportions. The high-peaked building was pocked on all sides with guns of all kinds, and on the highest point of the peak, the main character sat on a throne with a menacing expression on his face. After explaining to the monsters that they wouldn't pull a fight with him, King Jiseok ordered them to bring their boss to him. At the same moment, he heard the howl of a flying beast nearby. With its mouth wide open, the creature was about to devour its victim. Just as suddenly, a laser beam pierced through the flying monster, tearing its body into pieces. That shot was a warning to the rest of the hostiles. If they don't rush into action now, they'll just be shot one by one. But why are they just standing still and not moving? "Would you be frightened?" Jiseok inquired ominously, smiling haughtily. This self-assured speech provoked an army of monsters. They rushed into battle, but at the same second, most of them were felled by the castle's defensive guns. Some still managed to break through the barrage of fire, crashing into the wall at full speed. They began trying to punch through it. Their attempts only elicited laughter from Jiseok. He purposely let some monsters get close enough to burn them with flamethrowers. The battlefield has become a living hell. The remnants of the monsters, realizing the hopelessness of the situation, began to try to escape from this scorcher. But the boss didn't appreciate the cowardice of these pathetic fools. His name is Granturus, and he is the boss of the monsters of the other world. Danger level, GOAT. Anyone who dared turn his back on the enemy, he crushed with his huge paws. Granturus has reappeared in front of him, and this time, Jiseok expects to stop him for good. In turn, the monster boss himself was sure that Jiseok was hopeless. No matter how tall or massive his build, there was no way he could stop Granturus from breathing. Charging the attack, the boss released the flaming jet at full power. That's it. Jiseok came as the fire went out. Granturus said earlier that it doesn't matter how tall or massive the structure is. He said that supposedly nothing could resist his breath. He only thought so because he had never before encountered something as massive as what Jiseok had constructed. Compared to this giant, Granturus was just a small lizard. The outcome was a natural outcome. Granturus was flattened by by a single blow from that Decepticon's fist. Rumbling, rumbling, it's coming, rumbling, rumbling. What's going on in this mana? How did we go from Minecraft to Gurren Lagann on steroids? Having defeated the much-hated monster boss himself, Jisiok left the cockpit of his golem. Dropping to the ground, the boy brought the shovel up to the dead creature's torso. A lot of new items immediately appeared in his inventory. 10 Grantorous skins, an eye, 2 fangs, a heart, 6 drops of blood, and other crap you won't hear about again. The main reward for Jisiok in this battle was acquiring the XXX title. His fame began to spread throughout the other world. In addition to this, the ruler of the other world also changed. Grantorous was killed and was replaced by King Jisiok. Beings from another world will no longer dare to challenge the new ruler. However, this is not the end at all, since Jisiok has the privilege of ownership and can now control everything in the world of chronolife. This is just the beginning for him. From now on, he can do absolutely anything. Meanwhile, in the domain of a former lord of another world, the 7 Legion commanders had already received an alert from the system that Lord Grantorous was dead. Commander Doro initially wanted to send an investigative team to verify the facts, but he quickly changed his mind. The system can't be wrong, and so the monsters must prepare for war. The creatures were about to summon all reserves when suddenly a powerful vibration sounded. They couldn't mistake those footsteps for anything else. Lord Grantorous had arrived at his domain, greatly surprising his minions. After bowing before the Lord, Doro, the Legion commander, reported that they were just about to send their warriors out for revenge. "So, you are all gathered here?" An unfamiliar voice was heard from Grantorous' mouth. Looking up, the Legion commanders found that their lord looked somehow unusual. "So, you guys are the ones who have been killing and torturing me all the time? Everything I've done, everything I've built, you're the ones who destroyed it all?" The guy with the shovel said creepily, opening the eye socket of the machine and aiming dozens of laser cannons at his victims. Jisiok noted that each of them deserved exactly the same fate. Without even listening to the monster's objections, he coldly ordered them to shut up and accept their plight. The likeness of Grantorous' fiery breath sizzled through the former lord's domain in the same instant. Soon the ground cooled, and there was silence. Once down to earth, King Jisiok began mining for valuable minerals. "By the way, meet the commander of the 7th Legion of the Grantorous army. Loyal to Doro, this dude will be the main character's pet from now on." Asking the boss if he was tired, Doro offered to help him. Saying that he could do it himself, Jisiok pointed out that Doro used to be bigger. "How had you survived anyway?" The beastman, in turn, revealed that he could regenerate even from a part of his body, though he was getting smaller and weaker. And when Jisiok said that in that case, he would have no trouble finishing him off, Doro tearfully begged to be spared. As he continued to place blocks of minerals beneath him, the protagonist decided to ask the Legion General something. He wondered why the hell these guys were trying to kill him. In response, Doro apologized several times. In fact, one day the creator visited them and gave them a revelation. After ordering them to eliminate King Jisiok, he disappeared. Surprised by such a story, the protagonist asked why the creator would want to get into a fight with a regular user. "Would a bee in a hive understand the beekeeper's mind?" Doro whispered haughtily, then fell silent when he heard Jisiok say that he was being too smug for someone who could be crushed by a finger. Be that as it may, Doro didn't know if there was a way to meet the creator, and so he was unable to find out the real reason either. Incidentally, the beast also had one question at this point. "What exactly do you do?" Doro inquired. King Jisiok explained with a chuckle that he wanted to do something, and so he decided to build a tower. Pointing his finger upward, he added that he had always wanted to be there at least once. His goal was to get to the moon. It sounded like fun, and wasn't it interesting what was in there? Doro, in turn, shouted that this was nonsense. The relative motion of the star in the moon's orbit, supporting the weight of the rising tower, surviving in the vacuum of space. Too many factors made it impossible. However, Juk explained that his little friend was thinking superficially. He was going to go there because the moon was there. It was about romance, and besides, it's just a game, so somehow his tower idea would work. Stunned by the stupidity of his logic and the ineptitude of his cause and effect, Doro finally realized that the dude was a complete idiot. They were doomed. But now the brute had no choice but to pretend to serve this jerk as a master, and when the opportunity presented itself, he would surely destroy him. It had been a full day. King Jisiok and his little buddy continued building the tower. Doro would carry the mineral blocks upstairs to the boss, and the protagonist himself would put them in the right places. Occasionally, they would pause to coordinate the drawing of the tower for greater stability. Day after day passed. Once, Doro was even almost almost carried away by a huge bird flying by. Oh yes, they also slept at the top of this tower, and while they slept, they were protected by the late Grand Tourist Golem. By the way, these two reminded me of myself when I first played Minecraft. Unlike them, though, I never managed to make it to Earth's exosphere. It had already gotten cold up there, so they had to craft themselves some winter clothing. But even in spite of all these difficulties, if you think about it that way, during the days of uninterrupted work, these two had become quite good friends. All these events could not pass the eye of the creator. Of course, trying to get to the moon seemed foolish to him as well. Still, it was something interesting. The creator didn't want to disappoint such a dedicated player at all. So, when he got to the moon, there would be an interesting event waiting for him. Soon, King Jiseok, Doro, and his newfound boss donned spacesuits and stepped onto the surface of the moon. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for the entire Minecraft community. Juck never thought he would one day feel something like this. But who was even more shocked was Doro, screaming at the top of his lungs with joy. He couldn't believe they had actually succeeded. They sure as hell had built a tower of blocks from the Earth to the moon. Taking a seat, the two looked at the most enormous pencil ever built in Minecraft and remarked on how awesome a sight it was. In fact, Doro had never seen something like this in his life, and therefore had no idea that the view from the moon was so beautiful. The general thanked Jiseok for showing it to him. Once on his feet, the protagonist suggested they stop resting and start searching for lunar materials. At the same time, some rumbling noise was heard. "You came all this way to die, Blue Planet scum," growled a monster that appeared before them. This creature was called a blood-crazed moonlight rabbit. Its threat level was SS. Well, there was a lot of pathos from this little bunny, but it flew off into the next world from one blow. All this dude could do was scare Jiseok and his companion a little. Doro didn't even have time to realize it. Where had his boss gotten this mechanical thing from? As it turned out, the rabbit survived after all. Raising his head, he roared that none of the scum from the Blue Planet were coming back alive. The sounds coming from his mouth nearly deafened the protagonist and his friend. As it turned out, this hare had called out to his companions. Now, this whole situation was beginning to resemble something resembling a problem. Very quickly, the rabbits surrounded the two friends. Jiseok began trying to fight off his opponents, but one mechanical claw was clearly not enough. Looking behind at the boss's efforts to resist the crowd of rabbits, Doro realized that they had come unprepared for a large-scale battle. But the Legion General noticed that these monsters were only attacking this person and not paying attention to him. Realizing that this was his chance, the beast decided to return to the planet. However, when he remembered the tower, it was as if something stopped him. As he shifted his gaze to Earth, he remembered exactly who had given him this stunning view that he would never forget. Meanwhile, Jiseok continued to fight off the hordes of monsters. Suddenly, one of the rabbits discovered the guy's blind spot and attacked him from the back. At the same time, a certain projectile at tremendous speed pierced through him. It turned out to be Doro, who after finishing off the enemy, landed next to his boss. A surprised Jiseok said that he thought the Legion General was going to escape. Doro, in turn, explained that he would not leave his master alone, as he was grateful for him showing him something beautiful. And before the mob of rabbits pounced on them, the protagonist said he liked his partner's attitude. After a moment, the monsters piled their entire weight on top of the two of them. Doro already thought it was the end, but as he opened his eyes, he noticed he was safe. As he flew away from the monsters in the Power Moon suit, Jiseok noticed that Doro had also gotten a taste of the romance he was talking about. He had passed the test, so there was no reason for the guy to hold back anymore. His power suit had many tools with which he would destroy all those frumpy rabbits. Extending his arm forward, Jiseok unleashed the power of the suit on his enemies with an eerie smile. Sometime later, sitting on the moon and looking at the Earth, the two friends clinked their drinking glasses. As they each drank a glass of the unknown beverage, Doro asked his boss if that had been his original purpose. Jiseok, in turn, explained that the idea of labeling the moon with his name came to him in the process. In fact, they had spent quite a lot of time drawing out those letters. Doro wondered why his master was playing this game and doing such a chore. Then looking at the planet again, Jiseok explained that it was fun. Where else would he be able to admire the Earth while sitting on the moon? As soon as the guy thought about it, their admiration of the view was interrupted by some sort of purple aura. As it turned out, there was an explosion of incredible power on the ground. A huge chunk of another world's planet disappeared in a matter of seconds. Looking at it all, Doro couldn't believe that his favorite planet was almost half destroyed. Closing the power suit's visor, Jiseok ordered his partner to stay here. He himself immediately rushed in the direction from which the explosion had come. It all happened so fast that Doro didn't even have time to say anything to him. What the hell is going on? Who could blow the planet to pieces? Meanwhile, King Jiseok had already reached the surface. surface. Enraged by the fact that his buildings could have been destroyed, he vowed to kill whoever had done it all. Once on the ground, he removed his power suit and attempted to call out to the Granturus golem. To his dismay, he couldn't feel the signal from the golem anywhere at all. After running a little farther, he finally saw Granturus. More specifically, he saw what was left of him. The golem was even stronger than the last lord of this world, who had the strength to defeat him. As soon as the guy thought about it, someone's voice was heard behind him. "Boss, boss, there's someone alive left here," came the voice of a squeaky creature, pointing his finger at the weapon in Jiseok's hand. The mysterious man laughed. What kind of freak walks around here with a shovel? However, Urus, flying next to her boss, noticed that he himself walked with a wooden stick. Not that big of a difference between the two. This man possessed the strongest custom weapon of the Chronolife world, 99 times reinforced wooden stick. But that didn't bother King Jiseok. Now he wanted to know who the bastard was, and how dare he mess up his property. If you guys don't know, this guy is the main character from the plus 99 reinforced wooden stick Manhwa, where he is overpowered with his stick. Chronolife's strongest user with the plus 99 reinforced wooden stick. His name is Peace. Jiseok didn't recognize them. He hadn't seen any of the other players yet. Looking at the broken Granturus, the guy realized it was the work of this weirdo with a stick. And then there's the tower he worked so long and hard to build to get to the moon and experience true romance. Everything. It was all ruined. And for what? Who the hell is he after what he's done? Obviously a pervert wearing nothing but underwear. Jiseok is enraged. He advises the pervert to prepare to answer for his actions. Urus, the creature that accompanied the boy, appreciated the joke about the pervert and mocked his master in every possible way. The guy with the stick grinned, finding it funny that Jiseok didn't know who was standing in front of him, but Jiseok would find out soon enough. Peace takes off abruptly and rushes toward Jiseok. If King Jiseok doesn't know what kind of person is in front of him, he will have to pay for his ignorance. Peace gets in close to his opponent, looking to strike. The attack of the wooden stick was incredibly strong, but Jiseok managed to dodge it with his spacesuit. It was very dangerous. The last blow took out the left engine. Peace praised his opponent for his speed. The guy has a lot to answer for. He pulls out his whole new arsenal of alien weaponry again. Many shells of different calibers and one salvo headed for Peace. The guy found such a ridiculous title amusing. Well, my opponent has something to show for it too. Peace lands a sprawling uppercut that lifts the stone blocks into the air. Jiseok sees the approaching rocks and tries to make an emergency evacuation as a matter of urgency. Seconds before, the guy leaves his spacesuit that took the hit. Falling to the ground, the guy calls on his next creation for help. King's castle bursts out of the bowels of the earth. Peace is surprised by the appearance of a huge walking castle. With abrupt movements, Jiseok's lock starts hitting the spot where Peace was standing. Urus was horrified, his master disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, Doro watches from the moon. The dinosaur hopes his master is doing well. King's castle presses his huge hand into a single point. He's still not managing to pin his opponent to the ground, though. Peace lands a single left to hold off the onslaught of a walking headlock. Jiseok can't believe his eyes. This guy is blocking everything with a wooden stick. Now, it's time for Peace to show what he can do. The pervert climbs up the giant's arm very quickly. He's obviously up to something incredible. In the blink of an eye, Peace is over the head of the walking castle. Jiseok sees his opponent hovering over his fortress. "Downward strike!" shouted Peace, delivering a devastating blow. Judging by the look on his face, Peace noticed something strange. A multitude of cubes appeared in the air. First dozens, then hundreds. Thousands and tens of thousands of cubes appear in space. Jiseok uses his tool to create an entire army. An army of cubes of all kinds, all thanks to his shovel. A barrier of 1 million cubes was created in seconds. A superior defense against a superior offense. Jiseok is trying to figure out who this guy is who has such inhuman power. Peace is surprised too. That kid with the shovel is not a shy one, but we need to call it a day. The pervert is tired of playing with it. Peace breaks through the barrier of blocks at breakneck speed and approaches Jiseok. Shovel versus wooden stick. A collision is inevitable. Which will be stronger? Which tool owner will prevail in this fight? The force of the juxtaposition of these blows was visible from open space. The whole planet shook from this battle. Pieces of Earth scattered in all directions of outer space. An entire planet was split into two halves. After a short time, Urus finally found his master. Urus was impressed. The guy had managed to destroy an entire world. Maybe the developers should have built it stronger. Suddenly, Peace saw something he didn't expect to see. The shovel glowed bright blue flame in the owner's hands. How did Go survive something like that? King Gox stood on one of the pieces of land in open space. He could barely breathe. The guy didn't want to give up. He called the pervert names and teased him again. But unfortunately, either from fatigue or lack of air, Jiseok lost consciousness. That shovel looked very suspicious. The guy had such a strange weapon. He's clearly not not an ordinary player. Who he really is, Peace wondered. Suddenly, a huge crack appeared. Two people came out of it, a man and a woman. The CEO of Chronolife is Choi Deokbae, and his as-yet unknown companion. Deokbae was not happy that the guy had destroyed another planet again. Peace addressed the man as his grandfather and asked him what he was doing here. The man asked the guy the same question. At that moment, the girl noticed another unconscious user and headed toward him. While the girl was trying to bring the guy to his senses, Peace asked if this beauty is the grandfather's granddaughter. Lifting the guy up slightly, the brunette continues to try to find out Jiseok's condition. She asks him to show more perseverance. After all, she was the one who worked hard on making the guy stronger, even though she had to kill him throughout the game. This is such a caring support service. Or, to be more precise, another world lead developer, Yuria. The guy barely understands what she's saying, but it was very painful. Go lost consciousness again. The most important thing is that he's alive. The rest can be fixed. The girl kisses the guy right on the lips. Now that must be the romance Jiseok was talking about. Moments later, their lips were once again burned by the emptiness of open space. After a while, Doro tried to wake up his master. Slapping the guy on the cheek, he managed to cheer him up. Go rose abruptly and screamed that he was hurt. Holding his head, the guy tried to remember what happened. Suddenly, he started remembering moments that had happened recently. A shattered world, a shockwave that ripped the planet apart. But all of that was gone now. Everything was intact and harmless. Doro happily threw his arms around Jiseok. He was glad to see his master in good health. A little embarrassed, he said he was actually worried about himself and how he would have to live on the moon. Judging by the fact that Doro was around, that meant Jiseok was on the moon. Nervously running around the guy, the dinosaur checked to see if all of the Lord's limbs were intact. Felt great despite fighting a very strong opponent, though he remembered being badly wounded in battle with him. Jiseok asked Doro to tell him everything that had happened after he passed out. Doro gladly began to explain everything he saw. The first thing that happened was that the land was divided into two parts. Then, an unknown voice began to come from a huge spatial crack. The human silhouette asked everyone to remain alert and calm down. The girl brought the unconscious guy straight to the moon. She reassured Doro by saying that the guy was perfectly fine and just needed time to recover. She used a healing spell to save his life. It was a very powerful spell. Doro inquired as to who was to blame for all of this. Was it the creator? Were these all her antics? Yuria was flattered that Doro remembered who she was, but it wasn't her doing. It was all the fault of another user, a player with the +99 reinforced wooden stick. He crossed over from Chronolife's main server, the strongest being in this universe. Another world had been protecting new users with a system barrier that blocked main server users from entering until it was shattered by the +99 reinforced wooden stick. He shattered the barrier in one crushing blow. He has returned to his original world now, but peace will only last temporarily. The peace of this world will be threatened again. All of this is for Jiseok to find out when he wakes up. The Creator expects great things from him. He has to prove himself from all sides and accomplish a lot. After finishing her speech, Yuria rebuilt the destroyed planet. A tremendous energy pressed down on both halves of the globe. It all looked like the making of a supernova. The dust settled, and Doro tried to open his eyes. His surprise was indescribable. The planet had been fully restored. Doro looked around, but the Creator had disappeared as soon as her presence was no longer needed. The magical barrier had also been restored. That was how it all happened while Jiseok was passed out. After listening carefully to his acolyte, the lad hesitated. The guy was morally lost in himself. He had been too arrogant. Being called the ruler of another world had made him think he was invincible. He thought it was rather pathetic that, once again, he couldn't defend anything. Doro reassured the Lord. After all, he had survived the battle against the strongest player, which already meant he had fought well. Strange, since the guy pretty much only blocked punches and didn't attack back, all thanks to that weird shovel. How was he able to block this with it? It was able to withstand the strongest weapon, but because of that, even an entire world was destroyed. Jiseok held out the shovel to Doro and asked if he knew what materials the shovel was made of. But Doro is just a dinosaur. He doesn't know anything about minerals, but he has an idea who does. When it comes to minerals, it's the dwarves. They live together in Nelvin Mine. Dwarves are good at crafting, mining, and jewelry making. They can do it all. If that's really the case, Jisok uses the crafting skill. Even though Doro doesn't know where the mine is, he has a plan to find it. The fastest and most proven method is to search from a high altitude. By clicking the Create button, the necessary resources began to connect at one point. It's time to accelerate to achieve certain goals. That plus 99 pervert who destroyed his home should get a decent fight back. And this mystery girl, she just needs to wait a little while. Wait for him to gain the kind of power that no lousy player can match. No one goes unpunished. Jiseok's favor, another world, Dark Highland. The skeleton army fights in numerical superiority. They are facing 4 high-level players. One user destroys more than 5 skeletons in a single attack. Yoam is a level 49 warrior. The guy is glad that there are a lot of skeletons. It won't be boring like last time. A red-haired girl armed only with a shield smashes the bones of skeletons into dust and ashes. Peach Shield, warrior, level 42. The girl notices that although there are many skeletons, they are all terribly weak. A guy with animal ears incites the girl. Maybe it's easy for her because she's a monster herself. Fox, a level 41 thief, and the final player of this squad is Grace, a level 45 mage. Grace seems to think that the difficulty level was lowered specifically for new players. This was a very reasonable decision because if the monsters were very strong, the influx of new players could not be expected. The guys leveled up faster than the developers expected. Could it be that the server is run by some amateurs? Because recently, the server even managed to crash. Foxer thought their squad was the strongest on the server, but Yoim thought those words were highly presumptuous. Suddenly, Grace noticed something. Something large was approaching them through the air. The players kept a close eye on the unidentified flying object. Visibility was very poor, but with every second, the object was getting closer, and its outline was becoming more visible. The boys hoped they'd been caught by an unknown monster. Yoim thought that this monster was clearly unlucky to meet their squad first. The group was ready to speed up the landing of the object and possibly get special achievements for eliminating it. Meanwhile, in the cockpit of Granturus's head, Jisok was overjoyed. They had finally reached their destination. The mines were almost there, but Doro said it was just a skeleton residence. While in Granturus's head, Doro couldn't believe he had agreed to the idea. You still don't get it? It's about romance, Jisok said, smiling broadly. Jisok was glad that they had managed to find Granturus's head. At that moment, a pitiful whisper of "kill me" was heard. Looking out the window, the guy noticed the live users below. He wasn't alone in this world after all. Looking from top to bottom, it was obvious that the group was ready for battle or fighting someone. A bright flash of light blinded Jisok and Doro. Multiple ground attacks were directed at the unidentified flying object. Jisok hadn't expected such a warm welcome from the other players. Each of the squad tried to attack the target at range, except for Peach Shield. Looking at her comrades, the red-haired girl decided to try her hand at strength as well. She swung her shield to throw it properly. Huge rotational force, along with the strongest throw, should break through the monster's defense the first time, but the shield just bounced off Jisok's flying machine. All their attacks were no more powerful than raindrops hitting a window. Jisok couldn't understand why they were so weak. Maybe they were just newbies. After the battle with that guy in his underpants, the differences felt tremendous. Doro asked the gentleman what they would do with this group of players. Would they just let them go? There's no way Jiseok wants to let them go since they attacked first. The guy has to settle the score. He gives the order to Granturus and commands that the attackers be punished. Fire a volley of cannon fire. Wipe them out. The group of players noticed the jaws of an unknown monster begin to open. Granturus loads his gun to strike back. Looking at what was happening, Yoim felt a great deal of trouble. 3 of the squad took a direct hit. It was the first time they had encountered something like this. Yoim looked on in horror at his defeated comrades. It was incredible. Just one attack took down 3 members of one of the strongest squads. Jiseok saw one survivor. It had better take the first hit, but now, fire on target until there is a direct hit on the last target. Ma and 10 times more matcha beams. Granturus unleashes a large number of beams in the direction of the last adventurer on his playful sciatic support. The earth was engulfed in flames. It was impossible to see what was happening. Somehow, miraculously, Yoim was managing to dodge the death rays, but it didn't last long, and eventually, all targets were hit. After landing, Jiseok and Doro came out to look around. Yoim lay unconscious. Not even the sword from the weapon maker could help him deal with the looming threat. Doro didn't understand why they'd landed, since there was no one here to ask for directions to the mines, unless Jiseok resurrected the ancient skeletons and learned the way from them. The boy liked the idea. This could very well work. Jiseok would love to try his hand at a new endeavor. He He touched bones and skulls with his shovel, gathering materials from them. The first resource-gathering task was a success. Immediately afterward, a window appeared with the ability to craft new recipes. The activation conditions were very strange, but it was very interesting. Jisuk would now be able to create powerful skeletons depending on combinations of their resources. The boy was excited to experiment with his new abilities, especially since there were tons of resources out there for creating anything he could ever want. After a while, the guy created something small and bony, another bone creature that resembled a dog. The guy named his puppy Banaji, and now he had many other friends. Doro asked the guy to speed up and stop messing around. They didn't have time for games. Suddenly, the guy was interested in another system message, a special creation. Given the opportunity to create something special, since the guy had created over 100 unique models, he got the chance to create something incredibly rare. Smiling slightly, Jisuk said he had something like that in mind. Without thinking another minute, the guy hit the create button. Huge bones began to come together. Jisuk and his friends watched with open mouths. It was something unthinkable. The boy and Doro were very frightened by what they saw. To the triumphant explosions of fireworks, Lich appeared. He greeted his master. The 7-star skeleton was created using an epic creature. The Lich King himself had sworn allegiance to Jisuk. The undead king bowed his knee and asked his master to give him a name. Doro was in a panic. This creature didn't like him at all. This skeleton could be big trouble. The Lich King is the most cunning and evil monster. He would never submit to anyone. But Jisuk had already made up his mind. Henceforth, the name of this creature is Pigyuduk. Despite Doro's misgivings, Jisuk was pleased with his new servant. He seemed obedient, and he was sure he'd do well. The Lich thanked his master for the name and asked to know his master's first will. Of course, Jisuk immediately asked if Pigyuduk knew where the Nelvin mine was. Doro wanted to say something, but the Lich King immediately interrupted him because he really knew where it was. Jisuk asked to be escorted there immediately. The Lich, ready to follow orders, pulled out his bloody dagger. A few moments ago, when two seemingly ordinary instruments came into contact, a bright flash illuminated the dark forests of another world. The moment the planet split apart, a stream of unprecedented energy rushed into outer space. Moments later, the game developer restored everything as it was. Many people did not understand what had happened on the server. They looked up into the sky and saw something that no one had ever been able to see. It wasn't just regular users who saw this. The various monsters that inhabit the planet also noticed the signs. Even the inhabitants of the sea depths surfaced to see the unimaginable in person. Some of the royalty regarded the incident with surprise. It was actually quite amusing. Could this have been the message of another world's new host user? And others, those who covet the position of another world's ruler, heard a pretty catchy statement. By all who witnessed the words carved on the moon, he shall be known as the day of King's Advent. Let's get back to our hero. They are ready for the journey to Nelvin Mine, but Jisuk wants to do something before they leave. The boy turned around sharply and addressed the undead king. At that moment, the Lich hid his dagger behind his back. Guy thinks it's time for a change, and the skeletons don't need to hide anymore. King Leech doesn't understand what Jisuk means. The boy explains that they can't just leave these lands. After all, there's still plenty to do, and the Dark Highland needs a good shakeup. Meanwhile, Leech still hides his dagger out of Guy's sight. The guy offers to stay a little longer and start something he believes is important. Pigyuduk doesn't understand what the man is getting at. Meeting their glances, Jisuk asks everyone to get ready. Safety first. King Leech immediately finds himself in a construction worker's uniform. Jisuk has decided to build the safest living space possible. They can build it in a short time if they join forces. Their target is a fortress tower. They need to collect a lot of weapons so that no one can get close. It's up to them to take care of their own safety. All the skeletons are jubilant and excited about the new ideas. King Leech still stands bewildered at what is happening. Make skeletons great again. After a while, King Leech tosses his dagger. Catching it once again, he swings it with all his might to cut the red ribbon. The construction of the Dark Tower has been ceremonially completed. It was truly a magnificent job. Jisuk looked at Doro and asked him to perform one last safety test. Doro was clearly not eager to do it again, but the Lord's word was above his wishes. Targeting the intruder, Doro turned slowly toward the tower. Within seconds, the target was identified and destroyed. The final test was successfully passed. Jisuk could now continue his journey with peace of mind. If an enemy enemy appears that they can't handle, they should send out a laser signal and run away. When they see it, Jiseok will surely come to their aid. After petting Bangaji goodbye, Jiseok asked him to keep a good eye on their new home. There were no more tasks here, and they were going to follow on to Nelvin Mine. They got on the motorcycle and said goodbye to everyone once more. It was quite an exciting adventure on the Dark Island. Now it's time to follow the main mission. Doro asked why they had switched to another vehicle and left Granturus behind. Jiseok explained that it was too slow and clumsy. King Leech couldn't understand why the guy had spent so much time in this place. Doro was also puzzled, as this was not their main destination. Jiseok explained to them that it was fun and they had a great time there. Also, they had made a lot of new friends. King Leech thought about Jiseok. Piguduk hoped this next adventure would be enjoyable as well. Jiseok tried to make it so, and indeed they had a wonderful time on the road, sitting by the fire in the evenings and walking in the fresh air. Eventually, they successfully reached the mine. As they approached the entrance, they noticed large support beams. The entire passageway was illuminated with red miner lamps. It was quite a spectacular place at first glance. Okay, that's all well and good, but where are the dwarves? According to the Lich King's latest recollection, there had been no word from the dwarves in the mine for quite some time. Jiseok was shocked by what he heard. Since a certain day, the dwarves had stopped coming out of the mine. Among those who went into the mine to find out what happened, no one returned. Doro panicked, asking why the Lich hadn't mentioned this earlier. The Undead King replied that he hadn't been asked about it. While the group was thinking about what to do next, someone was watching them from above. Suddenly, Jiseok noticed two people attacking him from long range. Doro and Leech fended off the attack by the strangers. Bright red eyes stared at them in wonder. Guy asked Piguduk to check what was going on there. Leech was happy to accomplish the task at hand. Seeing the King of the Dead aggressively rushing into the fight, Jiseok asked that they not be killed, but simply captured. Lich gave 2 strong slaps to the 2 dwarves. Jiseok got a good look at the attackers. They were the guys they were looking for. The guy thought it was strange that the dwarves were being so aggressive. Were they always like this? Walking up to one of them, the guy started to bring him to his senses. After regaining consciousness, the dwarf advised the strangers to get their feet out of the place. All the dwarves in this mine had lost their minds and become violent. Anyone who enters the mine will be killed. After these words, the group looked around and noticed the presence of a large number of hostile dwarves. So, if they were able to bring these 2 back to consciousness, there must be a way to do the same for the others. It's likely that the hard blows to the head brought them to their senses. Smiling slightly, the guy came up with a terrific idea. There is a very simple and effective way: physiotherapy. Jiseok turned to the dwarves. He tried to provoke them into attacking, and he succeeded. The dwarves were furious and desired battle. The fun began. 3 against a whole family of dwarves. Lich immediately resorted to using his magical skills. He released multiple clots of dark energy toward the approaching army of opponents. Doro, like a real head crab, got into the heads of the little old men, and Jiseok was throwing his resistance group left and right using his mechanical fists. It seemed like a very exciting endeavor. No sooner had the guy told everyone to keep their guard up than he opened his own back to attack. Jiseok spotted his attacker and beat back the onslaught. At that moment, he was helped by the Lich King. The guy hadn't expected to see Leech next to him. They missed each other, and the guy said he could have done it alone. Leech didn't have an ounce of doubt about that. It was just a fluke. Watching what was going on, the first dwarf who woke up asked them not to make so much noise. A noise like that could wake up a real monster. Suddenly, a huge bony paw broke through the walls of the mine. At that very second, everyone froze in surprise. The dormant beast had awakened from its slumber. No one had ever met this creature before. Not even Doro, who knew all the big monsters. Well, things had taken a completely different turn. Now they'd have to fight a more powerful opponent than a bunch of crazy pensioners. Jiseok and Doro retreated to a safe distance to come up with a new plan. It was one revived by a curse. Zombie Dragon. You can personally read further information in the pop-up window. The monster didn't give them a chance to prepare and attacked sharply. For unknown reasons, the zombie dragon only chased Joka. Doro was very glad that this time he didn't have to be the tester and lure the monster onto himself. They needed to do something urgently because the situation was going off the deep end. Jiseok made a dash for it and called for Granturus. Granturus now had the opportunity to prove that he wasn't as useless as he was made out to be. The hostile monster was ready for battle, so the battle of the giants was about to begin. Each opponent looked intimidating, but Granturus wasn't used to being looked down down upon. He turned on his engine and tried to gain altitude to continue the battle of looks. With a sudden movement, the zombie dragon shot down the propeller and landed ahead on the ground. The monster grabbed Granturus's head with his paws. It seemed this fight would end in defeat for the Green Man. Jiseok requested help, but he didn't know how yet, as he didn't have the resources. Suddenly, the guy remembered one interesting feature. He could create something like this out of bones. Abruptly, a strong glow appeared where Granturus's head had been. The zombie dragon continued to stare at the flash of light with incomprehension. The monster saw something incredible in front of him. Jiseok had once again created an object using the Bone Maker skill. This time, it was a legendary creature, and the number of stars was impressive. A huge skull Granturus of incredibly dangerous level appeared in front of the poor zombie dragon. Either from fear or overconfidence, the monster let out a piercing scream. Granturus made a head-on attack with his head. The monster immediately lost consciousness, after which Bone Granturus tossed his opponent high above him with his tail. Jiseok kept a close eye on the situation and ordered that the monster be finished. Granturus raised his head and opened his mouth wide. He gathered enough energy for a final attack, a direct hit on the enemy. The power of such an attack practically vaporized the zombie dragon. The beam continued to destroy everything in its path. Everyone was looking at this incredible sight. Of those present, clearly no one had ever seen anything like this before. Jiseok was also satisfied. Perhaps this monster was the reason for all those mysterious disappearances. There were spectators gathered outside as well. They were also looking at the huge pillar of energy nailing the ancient mountain across. One of them thought that by the looks of it, they'd managed to beat him. "What will they do now?" the gray-haired man asked his teacher. The man pulled out a piece of paper and crumpled it up. It was a really good question. The contract was no longer valid, and the man threw it away. This man is a shark named Heart Heater, and his assistant is Rome. Looks like they should get in touch with some idiot now. Soon, the noise in the Nelvin mine subsided. The dwarves who had come to their senses began to celebrate their long-awaited release as they approached the eye of the defeated zombie dragon. They couldn't believe they had been ruled by something like him. It was so humiliating. While the palace guards were inspecting the monster's remains, Jiseok asked Doro if he had found anything interesting. Doro replied that it was empty. The little beast man remarked that something strange was going on. There wasn't supposed to be a monster he didn't know about. This was the first time he had ever seen one like this. Then, one of the dwarves spoke up, saying the creature had suddenly appeared in the mine one day. He had heard rumors that these outsiders had saved them. The minekeeper Kim thanked them wholeheartedly. After shaking hands, King Jiseok and the green-bearded dwarf introduced themselves to each other. Seizing the perfect moment, the main character asked the minekeeper something. Handing the old man his shovel, he inquired about the material it was made of. When the elderly dwarf took the item in his hands, everyone immediately realized he was a true master of his craft. The texture, the curves. He instantly analyzed the essence of the marvelous tool. The answer he gave shocked everyone. He had no clue what the shovel was made of. In truth, he knew absolutely nothing about the mineral. He found it fascinating. After saying goodbye to his rescuers, Kim tried to walk off with the shovel. Only after a moment did Jiseok realize what the old geezer was trying to do. Grabbing him by the beard in a rage, Jiseok shouted at him not to rush off like that. Later, King Jiseok demonstrated the shovel's capabilities by building a tall fountain in the shape of the zombie dragon. Raising the shovel again, he asked once more if anyone knew what the material was. The minekeeper replied that he still had no idea, but he wouldn't mind accepting it as a gift. Letting the words pass over him, Jiseok wondered what to do next. He still wanted to know what his weapons were made of, so he turned to the Lich King and asked where the best place was to get information in the other world. Piguduk advised him to go to the launch plaza. Since that's where users first enter the game, there's likely to be a lot of diverse information there. However, Jiseok was surprised by the mention of a launching pad. He had first appeared in the middle of a field. Where did this initial city come from? "Rim, has that idiot arrived yet?" Heart Heater asked his assistant while strolling through the bustling marketplace of the launch plaza. Following him, Rim replied that the idiot had promised to come after completing all his tasks. Their conversation was interrupted by someone's shouts that drew a crowd. Holding up a leaflet with the head of a mechanized kite drawn on it, a young man called for everyone's attention. Joachim told the crowd that this monster was incredibly strong. If left alone, it would turn another world into a wasteland. Hearing the Joachim squad ask for help came as a shock to many. It meant the situation was serious. The whole spectacle amused the lone shark. As he walked along the line of knights, he noticed that everyone seemed quite energetic today. At that moment, a familiar voice rang out. Are you sure about this?" a woman inquired playfully. "If it's as you say, fighting this monster should be extremely fun." As soon as she said this, the ranks of knights began to move. Everyone in the square immediately recognized the emblem on their armor. These were the royal palace guards. The members of the divine guild had gathered. Alongside them, red-cloaked warriors marched in formation. Their red cloaks with white crosses identified them as members of the elite group of 10 strongest holy knights. A group of powerful royal court mages had also gathered. They were from the Holy Land Guild. Valbindon, the guild of righteous thieves, took its place as well. Finally, the strongest organization in the other world arrived, the Guild of Justice. The gathering of all 5 guilds formed a new alliance, the World Guild Alliance, another world's branch. The current commander of this organization was Miss Hawk. Joachim's speech caught her attention. Now he had to escort Miss Hawk and the World Guild to the site where the monster had appeared. Meanwhile, in the Nelvin mine, King Jiseok warned his partner that he needed to log off for a short break. When he returned, he planned to head straight to the launch pad. Calling Kim over, he asked the dwarf to look after the mine in his absence. The elderly dwarf warned that he'd probably be drinking and idling around, given how long they had lived under the monster's oppression. Saying he was hopeless, Doro asked what the dwarf had in his backpack. That's when Kim pulled out diamondium and said he was going to sell it at the plaza, and Jiseok would get the biggest cut of the deal, naturally as gratitude for saving the dwarves. Having settled things with the minekeeper, Jiseok logged out of the game. He left the undead king in charge of protecting old Kim and the diamondium. Before he finally disappeared, the dwarves bid him a warm farewell. Waving back, Jiseok smiled and promised to return soon. System alert. You have been logged out of the game. King Jiseok, still smiling, lay on his bed with one hand raised. Back in reality, he slowly lifted off the VR headset goggles. For a while, he lay there staring at the ceiling with a disgruntled expression. Reality always hit him hard when he returned. After a while, hunger took over. He made himself some curry, sat at the table, and turned on the news. As usual, Chronolife, another world, topped the media charts. A news segment reported that a rare material, currently experiencing a worldwide shortage, was causing a stir. The mineral? Diamondium. It hadn't been on the market for a month, and due to its scarcity, the price had increased tenfold. Hearing this, Jiseok recalled that this was the ore old man Kim was planning to sell. Looks like they were going to make a lot more money than expected. As if confirming his thoughts, the anchor reported the current market price, 100 million won per kilogram. In shock, Jiseok spit out the curry he had just eaten. He had no idea he'd been sitting on a literal mountain of gold. Meanwhile, in a small guest house in the starting town, Rim was furious about how late the idiot was. What if he doesn't show up at all? But Heart Heater was confident. He'll come. He hates losing more than he hates death. Still, he really is the #1 idiot in the world. Oh dear. Not very gentlemanly, is it? The lone shark muttered with a smile. Suddenly, a rumbling sound was heard in the center of the town. System alert, connecting to another world. After the announcement, the silhouette of an unknown warrior began to form in the center of the crowded square. This person was #1, by the system's own definition. Golden armor, red hair, a crown with a purple gem on his head. His features stood out from the gray crowd. The best hardcore leveling warrior is back. A short while later at the guest house, smiling good-naturedly, Lone Shark remarked that it had been a while since they had seen each other. Agreeing with him, the hardcore leveling warrior asked Heart Heater how he was doing. Rumors had recently reached him that the zombie dragon had died. The hardcore warrior would have liked to deal with it himself, but it seems to be too late. While Rim irritably poured tea for their guest, Heart Heater started talking about that boy who killed the zombie dragon. He seems to have taken possession of the Nelvin mine after this fight. After pounding Rim, the hardcore warrior asked to move closer to the action. "Are you going to send me to eliminate him?" he asked, taking an epic sip of his tea before collapsing to the floor and screaming in pain from his tongue burned by the hot drink. Meanwhile, tossing some kind of sheet at the guy lying on the floor, Heart Heater asked if he would accept the new request. The leaf fell right on the hardcore leveling warrior's face. His mission will be to find whoever took possession of the Nelvin mine in the gloomy highlands. The hardcore warrior will then have to do what is spelled out in the contract condition. At the same time, in the Nelvin mine, suddenly, the master of these lands was back in the game. But why so fast? It hasn't even been a couple of hours. Just by appearing in the other world, King Jiseok said that they should hurry up today. Their path is to the starting plaza. Old man Kim wasn't expecting the guy to come at all either, and so he came out to him in his afternoon nap outfit. Excited by what he had recently heard on the news, Jiseok was all right. Everything was ready to go. And so the guy announced that they were leaving now. No one understood what the rush was for. Jiseok had once again left his loyal Lich King in charge of the mine. He chose the smartest and strongest guard to guard such an important strategic facility. Noticing that the gentleman was somehow in too much of a hurry, Pagoda remarked that apparently the price of diamondium was quite high. After all, they are next to a dark island. Everyone knows that diamondium does not occur very often, even in such mineral-rich places. That was why the undead king reminded him that it might not be safe to deliver so many valuable materials. Not only do you need good security, but you also need a reliable means of transportation. After pondering what they would use to transport such a pile of diamondium, the Lich and his master came to a consensus. A couple of minutes later, the entire expedition was seated in the improvised vehicle created from Granturus's head. Piguduk's idea turned out to be quite ingenious. They simply detached the head, thereby solving all security problems. In addition, this means of transportation is not only convenient, but also quite fast. And while Jiseok was proudly praising Granturus, the sound of a bowstring was heard nearby. The arrow flew out at a tremendous speed, after which it pierced the wheel of the machine. The impact was so powerful that it threw Granturus up, putting Jiseok and everyone riding along with him into a stupor. The World Guild's army became visible on the nearest hilltop, and the one who fired that unfortunate arrow was Miss Hawk. Granturus found himself surrounded in an open area. For Hawk, it was the perfect setting to begin her performance. Aiming an arrow with TNT strapped to it at the sky, the woman announced a full attack. As soon as she released the bowstring, a bright red flash appeared in the sky. This turned out to be the signal for the rest of the troops. The Divine Guild, led by its commander, took on a melee attack. The Crossing the Line Guild squad with Mad Su Yang and the Vanguard would act as support. And of course, to create a surprise effect, the monster would also be attacked from the sky. Bibbidi Boo and his Holy Land Guild would take care of it. And why these dudes came here, I have no idea. After giving orders to most of the troops, Miss Hawk also rushed into battle along with the men from her guild. The alliance of world guilds had completely surrounded Granturus. Looking out the window of his car, Jiseok couldn't figure out who these guys were. It doesn't matter anymore, though. Without intending to look into it, the guy activated the Micha beam. However, Miss Hawk expected such an action. Before Granturus attacked, the woman ordered to proceed with Plan A. Because of this, all of the soldiers managed to dodge and counterattack. The guild commanders were also not left out and rushed to the front lines. Watching from above, Bibbidi Boo noticed that some of the information about the monster converged with the report of the players who encountered it. By the way, the loser Joachim is also present in this battle. Running out in front of all the commanders and squads, he jumped right onto Granturus's hull. Swinging his sword as hard as he could, he tried to pierce the monster's eye. But when his blade made contact with the eye, there was a suspicious clinking of glass. Soon, having failed to pierce the eye of the enemy, Joachim noticed the silhouette of some person on the other side of the eye. Pressing himself close to the glass, Jiseok began to stare at the dude with hatred. He then swung the glass compartment of the Granturus open sharply, slamming Joachim into the hull of the giant machine. Seeing a player like them, the World Guild army froze. "You damn thieves!" King Jiseok roared in anger. Putting his foot up, he yelled even louder that there was no way he was giving them his diamondium. At the same moment, a huge mechanical foot emerged from under Granturus's head. When the guy started kicking the hull of the machine, the mechanical foot, repeating the movements behind him, began to trample the enemies one by one. Still not understanding what was going on here, the commanders and their troops tried to flee the battlefield. However, the general panic was averted by the head of the Thieves Guild. The soldiers and their commanders were stunned when they saw the player. They didn't know if he was friend or foe, so they hesitated. Now, that bastard had attacked them and therefore officially became their enemy. Very quickly, the guild heads gathered their thoughts. Together, they rushed into a combined attack, supporting each other and quickly closing the distance with the target. Just when Jiseok thought it was all over, an unfamiliar voice was heard. First, sword-wielding style, a flash of moonlight. After uttering those words, chopped up most of the World Guild soldiers on the field. Looking at such a performance, Jiseok and the others froze in amazement. Meanwhile, the red-haired swordsman had already landed beside him. As the stranger approached him, he asked if he was the guy with the shovel who had taken over the mine. Looking at the red-haired man suspiciously, Jisiok asked, "What if I am?" Then, striking his shovel with his sword, the hardcore leveling warrior spoke out, "Dear customer, let me escort you safely. If you're excited for the next part, leave a comment and I'll do my best to bring it to you as soon as possible."